Now let's actually go in and look at the specific types of storage. Now, the first one I'm going to throw at you here, I will tell you, is really almost more of a history lesson than it is anything that is currently used today. It's not to say that you won't find this in today's computers, but it's becoming extremely rare, and that is something called a floppy disk. Now, on the left side of the screen, I have two different types of floppy disks, and I will tell you that these are not the only two we had. Okay, the one at the bottom is a 5.25-inch floppy disk, and if you were actually holding it in your hand right now, guess what? It would be floppy. It actually is bendable, and that's where the term floppy disk came from, is because this is a very flexible disk. Now, I mentioned that there are more than just what I have on the screen. If you go further back in time, you actually have 8-inch floppy disks, and even beyond that, there are other types. But in the mainstream marketplace, 8-inch and then 5.25-inch, and then finally, the one that I have at the top on the left side of the screen there is a 3.5-inch floppy disk. And a lot of people got confused with this floppy disk because it's not floppy. If you were holding this in your hand right now, it would be solid. And if I was banging on the desk, which I don't have one in my hand or else I'd make the noise for you. If I was banging on the desk, it would actually make a banging noise. It's solid. The reason this is still considered to be a floppy disk is because only the casing that you're looking at, just that outer casing, is actually hard. Whereas the disk itself, if you were to slide that little metal bracket that's at the top of the disk I've illustrated there, if you slid that over, you would actually get to see the disk part itself where you actually read and write. And that's still a floppy disk, a bendable, flexible disk. To the right, I have a picture of a floppy drive and the floppy ribbon cable that is used to connect that drive. Typical storage of a 3.5-inch floppy disk was 1.44 megabytes. Yes, that's right. I said basically 1.5 megabytes. You see why floppy disks are almost pointless? I mean, you can't even put an MP3 on there, right? You can't even put most songs on there. There's not much you could put onto a floppy disk, and that's why you don't see these anymore. There were double-sided. Matter of fact, the one that's illustrated on the screen is a double-sided. I can tell because there's holes on the left and the right side of it. And that means it could hold 2.88, which means it could hold almost 3 megabytes. But again, pretty much obsolete. Okay, so this is more of a history lesson than something you're going to be dealing with in today's world.